All right, let's dive right in. We're about to tackle one of the oldest, toughest questions in all of human history. I'm talking about a true philosophical cold case, one that stumped the greatest minds for literally thousands of years.
And here it is. This is the heart of the mystery, the crime scene, if you will. The fundamental paradox that just doesn't make sense. If a perfect, all good God created everything, then where in the world does all this evil come from? Why is everything so full of cruelty, disease, and just pain? It just doesn't add up, right?
So, for centuries, one of the first groups to really try and crack this case were the ancient Greek philosophers, specifically the Platonists and all their followers. They came up with what they thought was a pretty solid alibi for the creator. Okay, so the Platonic argument is actually pretty elegant, pretty simple. They basically said, look, evil isn't a thing, it's not a substance, it's just the absence of goodness. Kind of like how a shadow is just the absence of light. So the creator, he made all the good stuff. But the further you get from that perfect source, well, the more flaws start to pop up in the passive, kind of dead matter of the universe. And voila, case closed, right? The creator's innocent.
Well, not so fast. A group of ancient thinkers that we now call the Gnostics, they looked at this neat little explanation and were like, no way, not buying it. This clean, philosophical alibi just didn't square with the brutal reality they saw all around them. I mean, the suffering in the world. It didn't feel passive, like a lack of light. It felt active. It felt aggressive, almost intentional. Think about it. Predation in nature, horrific diseases. This wasn't just some shadow. This felt like something else was going on. Something else entirely. And so the Gnostics basically became the new detectives on the case. They threw out that Platonic alibi. They were convinced that all this abstract philosophy just couldn't explain real, tangible suffering. No, they needed to go straight to the source. And this is where their genius really starts to shine. They had this brilliant idea. They thought, okay, what if we stop trying to come up with excuses for the creator, and instead we just analyze the creator's own words? So they turned to the Old Testament. But they didn't treat it like scripture to be revered. Oh no, they treated it like a direct testimony, a potential confession from the prime suspect himself. And you know what? When they started reading it really, really carefully, they uncovered some passages that, well, to them, they sounded less like a perfect, all-knowing God and a whole lot more like a perpetrator admitting to the crime. And boom, there it is in black and white. I create evil. Wow. For the Gnostics, this wasn't some kind of metaphor you could just explain away. This was a direct admission of guilt. The suspect was confessing, right there in his own testimony. He wasn't just allowing evil to exist as some passive absence of good. He was flat out saying he actively creates it. And the evidence just kept piling up. Next up, I am a jealous God. The Gnostics had to ask themselves, how could a perfect, ultimate, all-encompassing God feel a petty, totally human emotion like jealousy? And how could a truly good being punish innocent children for something their parents did? I mean, come on, this just didn't sound like the ultimate source of all goodness. It sounded like something else, something very, very different. So all this evidence, it builds to this absolutely stunning conclusion. And the logic, when you lay it out, is crystal clear. Let's walk through it. 1. The ultimate, highest God. That being has to be perfect goodness and light, right? 2. A perfect being just doesn't create evil or feel jealousy or punish innocent kids. 3. The creator God of the Old Testament openly says he does all those things. So what's the only possible conclusion left? The being who created our world and the highest true God, well, they can't be the same entity. They're two different beings. I mean, that deduction, it led them to a verdict so radical, it completely overturned thousands of years of religious thought. They had identified a brand new culprit in this cosmic crime. And they gave this creator a name, the Demiurge. Now, they borrowed that term from Plato, but they twisted it in this really radical way. See, for Plato, the Demiurge was just a neutral craftsman. But for the Gnostics, oh no. They saw an arrogant, ignorant, and deeply flawed entity, one who totally botched the job of creation and ended up fashioning a world that was just a reflection of his own imperfect nature. And like any good criminal, this guy had a bunch of aliases. The Gnostics also called him Jaldabaoth or Sackless, and maybe the most telling name of all, Samael, which actually means the blind god. Blind, you see, to the higher perfect reality that existed way above him. And this insight right here, this is the master key to their entire solution.
Because for the Gnostics, the problem of evil wasn't really a problem at all. See, the world isn't some perfect creation that mysteriously went wrong. No, it's an imperfect creation made by an imperfect creator. The flaws? They aren't a bug, they're a feature. They were baked into the system from the very beginning. Check out this quote from a classic Gnostic text, the Apocryphon of Jammon. It just captures this perfectly. You can feel the sheer arrogance of the demiurge, right? He's shouting, "I am God and there is no other God besides me." But then, a voice comes down from the true, higher realm of light and just shuts him down, calling him out by name. "You're mistaken, Samael." It's brilliant. He's not the master of the universe. He's like a cosmic middle manager who thinks he's the CEO.
So, as far as the Gnostics were concerned, the case was closed. They had looked at the evidence everyone else was just glossing over, they followed it to its only logical conclusion, and they had finally identified the real culprit behind our flawed, suffering world. And this really is the key takeaway here. This idea completely flips the traditional script on its head. In the Gnostic view, our material world, it's not some beautiful gift we should be celebrating. It's a prison. It's a cage for the divine sparks of light that are trapped inside each and every one of us, all of it built by a flawed, ignorant warden, the demiurge.
And that leaves us with one last, really provocative thought to chew on. It's a radical idea for sure, but it's the powerful conclusion the Gnostics came to in their quest to finally solve the problem of evil. So let me ask you this. What if this world, this reality we all experience every day, what if it isn't a divine creation at all, but a cage that we are all meant to escape?